Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 24 playthrough of the Buffalo Wings. We have made it to the start of the free agency period in the 2037 2038 offseason, and we've also bumped our scouting and development budgets back up to where they were a year ago. And with the moves that we've made in the previous episode and the moves that we haven't made in the previous episode, we've got some money to bring on free agents or contracts this offseason. The issue is that we don't have a lot of money available for extensions, so it's pretty much going to have to be a one-year deal or a deal where a team is retaining a significant chunk of the contract to make it work. Clearly, we can tweak scouting and development, which also goes into the money for extensions to allow ourselves to make a move if there's a move to make. But the thing that I'm hopeful about with this team is that I don't think there's a ton of moves that we need to make. The one obvious hole we have as we head into free agency is for a backup catcher. We've had Andres Medina and I believe it was Walt Miller, somebody Miller, as our backup catcher for the last several seasons, and we made a 4-year commitment to bring Medina back a few weeks ago before we got to free agency. And what that meant is we decided to trade Miller away rather than be spending $5 million on a backup catcher. In retrospect, we could have afforded it, so I guess there is an argument to be made to have kept Miller around for another year. But as a pretty solid defensive catcher who's got a little pop in his bat, even though his bat is certainly not exceptional, he did have some trade value, and including him in the deal with Bobby Bolig and one of the top prospects in our system in Mendoza, allowed us to get Bolig's contract completely off of our books for the next 4+ seasons, and also allowed us to bring back a potentially useful second baseman and a potentially interesting center field prospect in return, even though it was primarily a salary dump for us. And certainly a player with Miller's value was a big part of that. So backup catcher is a clear need for us. There's lots of avenues where we can hit that. Certainly we'll look in free agency. Right now, I don't feel as if there's a obvious, clear alternative. Want a backup catcher who is good defensively. But when we're looking at the guys who are available, Luis Limas and Campbell Smithwick both stand out. Smithwick's 60 ability, 60 arm, and Lemus 70 ability, 50 arm. The issue is Lemus is looking for $8.5 million and Smithwick looking for $14.6 million. So that is not, and those are not numbers that we would be willing to hit for a backup catcher. A couple of our former guys are free agents, but they're really catchers only in an emergency. Samuel Basallo has been with us in the minors the last couple of years, put up some stupid numbers, but defensively as a catcher is unacceptable. And Gavin Grahovac, who was with us years ago, another guy who defensively as a catcher with that 35 ability is just a stopgap and not even someone you would want in the lineup every day. Jeff Butler, 27-year-old, kind of interesting. He's durable, above average catcher ability, slightly above average arm. He's got leadership. He can hit a ball out of the park every once in a while. Let's take a look at what he's done as a major leaguer. But a 69 WRC plus, does have 4 homers and 164 at-bats, but just a 207 batting average. I'd probably honestly stick with some of the younger guys in our system as a potential backup rather than him. Blake Mitchell, and again, I would know there's more to defense than just the raw ratings. Kind of the combination of numbers make a big impact on who you'd want as a catcher. It's possible there's somebody with a 60 rating here who's a 40 defensive catcher with an 80 arm, which isn't really what I'm looking for. And Blake Mitchell is not quite that extreme, but kind of makes the point. He's got average catcher ability, really good arm. Another guy who could hit the ball out of the park occasionally, looking for $8.5 million. Don't really view that as being a realistic option. Logan Tanner, nice glove. Guy can't hit. 37 years old. Not the best guy in the clubhouse with that low leadership. He's only looking for a minor league deal, but to me still borderline whether I'd even want him around. Joe Scoville. Again, he just can't hit, but defensively would not be a bad backup catcher, has some positive personality traits. So to me, there's not any obvious pound the table guy that I'm interested in as having our backup catcher right now, which means right now it's probably some combination of Ted Jackson and Jorge Berrios. What I'm leaning towards at this point would be to have Ted Jackson as the backup for Medina when the season starts. And granted, ultimately I'd like someone with better catcher ability, so I think that it's conceivable that we'll find somebody better for Jackson through the Rule 5 or through the trade market or through waivers or maybe through free agency when prices come down. But if we didn't make any moves for the next 5.5 months and we're starting the season with what we have, I think I'd have Jackson on the major league team as Medina's backup. The young prospect Jorge Berrios, who's a little better defensively, would promote him to AAA so he can play every day there rather than sit on the bench 70 or 80% of the time in the majors. If we had the, I don't want to say catastrophic situation, but certainly the negative development that Medina ended up injured for a long period of time, though, in that scenario, I probably would bring Berrios up from AAA and play him every day over Jackson. But if someone's going to be sitting on the bench 80% of the time in the majors, right now I'd lean towards that being Ted Jackson. And while we don't have a ton of money for extensions right now, good piece of news is that basically, except for 3 players, everyone we have signed to a major league deal can be back with us next year if we want them to. Even Joe Edwards facing a potentially big arbitration number. And as I've kind of gone back and forth in the comments with 3/4 Badger on Joe Edwards, there is potential if we decide to give the second base job to Jim Arp, or if Jim Arp earns the second base job, that it might be hard for us to get regular playing time for Edwards this year, particularly against right-handed pitching. A bit of a two-edged sword, I guess. The positive thing is that maybe it means his arbitration number next year is lower because he's not going to be out there every day playing like he has been the last couple years. But the negative is he's a pretty useful player. Coming off of a very poor year, the worst year of his career where he got significant playing time. But this is a guy who's had 130 WRC pluses 2 consecutive years, has some pop in his bat, and a great eye to draw walks with. So I think he can still help us, but if he doesn't play every day this year, that arbitration number for next year is probably lower. So there'll be a lot of things to balance as we proceed through the offseason. But back to my original point, only 3 guys who are not ours if we want them to be ours next year. The reliever Juan Reynoso, who we picked up in a trade with Boston last June, he was pretty brutal for us in a relatively small sample size. Like having a guy like him out of the bullpen because he is a guy who could start for us in a pinch if we needed. He's only looking for 2 years at $2.4 million a year. So the number he's looking for is not all that high. That said, he was such a disaster for us next year. I'm not going to try to lock him up right now. Looking at his ratings, I think he's fine. But if we look at his history at the major league level, he's been a pretty average pitcher, and he was well below average in his time pitching in Buffalo. Two more significant potential departures would be the right-handed reliever Elvin Jimenez, who's in the mix to be our closer again this season. He took over as our closer for Mems when Mems got injured relatively early last year, but then we took the job away from him when we made a trade for a more accomplished closer closing in on the trade deadline. But Jimenez now back in the mix to be our closer this upcoming season. Certainly with his profile and the performance he's had in the year and a half that he's been with us, would love to have him back. Issue is that he's looking for 4 years at $11 million a year right now, which for a reliever who's going to be 34 years old by the start of the season after this one seems a bit high to us. Lorne Walborn is, I think he's just been an incredible trade for us. This is a guy we picked up from the Dodgers 4 seasons ago, and all he has done in his 4 seasons in Buffalo is lead the league in games every year, lead the league in holds every year, and in a high-volume stopper role for us, averaged over 140 innings pitched a season. He's been an all-star twice for us, and he even won the Mariano Rivera Award as the top closer in the league, or the top reliever in the league. He wasn't a closer his first year with us, and he's been a member of both of our World Championship teams. So we would love to have him back. He's also a lefty, and we're facing somewhat less of a dearth of lefties in our bullpen than we have over the last 2 seasons heading into this year. So that doesn't mean that next season we aren't going to be in the same situation with lefties, particularly if we have to move on from Walborn. And right now he's looking for similar contract to Valise, an extra year and a little bit extra money per season. So not a contract that I'm going to give him right now. Certainly with the numbers that they're looking for, it would be practically impossible for us to bring back both Walborn and Jimenez. Sorry, I was referring to Jimenez before and I called him Valise for some reason. Valise is the other lefty in the pen, or the other more accomplished lefty in the pen, along with Walborn. But hard to see a scenario where we could have Walborn and Jimenez both back in 2039. Quite honestly, I don't know that I want to spend $10-ish million on any reliever. But if there is a reliever to potentially spend that on, it would probably be somebody like Walborn, even more than a closer, who's giving us borderline starter innings and excellent job in those borderline starter innings with well over a strikeout per inning, an ERA under 3, and a 69 FIP minus over the course of his 4 years in Buffalo. But nothing to do on those fronts right now, from my opinion. But as I said, we'll have most of our players under contract back with us in 2039. Just a matter of figuring out after this year whether we want to bring any of those arms back in our bullpen. And certainly we'll have another decision to make with Joe Edwards next offseason in his final arbitration eligible year, as I touched upon. So I tend to think the start of free agency and perhaps the entire free agent period is going to be relatively quiet for us. We don't have any pressing needs. Certainly if we could add a Michael Harris II or a Kyle Tucker, love to have a bat like that in our lineup, but we don't have the money to do that. And those guys in their mid-30s and early 40s, probably not the type of guys we should be looking to spend some money on, especially given that they're both wrecked. Pitching-wise, There's some interesting prospects out there, including our former closer Chris Bloomquist, who I mentioned traded for last year, and he took that role over for a little bit of time from Jimenez. He had told us he was looking for over $20 million a year for an extension, so maybe he just hated us because his number seems to be a lot less on the open market. Yeah, says he's looking for 5 years, 16.7 now. Not a contract that I think we would be willing to give at this point. But if there is a useful reliever, or probably more accurately, if there's a top-notch reliever available whose price ends up coming down and ultimately is willing to do a short-term deal, that could be something we look at in the off-season as well. But right now, I don't anticipate us being big players in free agency, so I'm just going to start kind of scouting out some people to perhaps add into our minor league system to bolster our farm system and get some good personalities and players who can ensure that we continue to be successful in the minors onto our team, and probably start preparing and focusing on the Rule 5 draft and getting ready for the international amateur free agent signing period. And we've been moving forward for a couple weeks now in free agency, looking at some trades, exploring lots of different things, but nothing all that interesting to report on. We did just lose Chris Bloomquist. He ended up signing for a lot less money than he had been looking for, average of a little under $12 million for 3 years with the Cubs. Our fans not happy that he has moved on, but still have 100 fan interest at this point. So much more reasonable contract for Bloomquist than he had led us to believe he would be willing to accept. And we've simmed ahead another week or so to the Rule 5 draft. Still haven't done anything as far as our backup catcher spot, so we'll hope that maybe there's a catcher of our future who somehow is available in the Rule 5 draft. Not expecting that, but even if there's someone who's competent defensively with a decent personality, that could be all we really need for a backup catcher for this upcoming season. We've had a lot of luck in the past finding relievers for the back end of our bullpen in the Rule 5 as well. So we'll probably do something. Probably won't be revolutionary, but we'll cross our fingers that something really interesting is available. And unfortunately for us, there's actually relatively slim pickings in the Rule 5 draft this year. And we also have more players on our 40-man roster than we normally do with 36. So means we still could draft 4 guys. We're not going to this year. Our scouting director recommends we do nothing. And I think it's unlikely that we'll retain anyone that we pick up. But like to kind of see some guys in. Lazaro Savonarola is a 22-year-old pitcher in the Baltimore Orioles system. Throws pretty hard in the high 90s, has some good personality traits. Question whether he's really a big-time major league arm. Do like the fact that he's durable. He's only 22. We only have high scouting accuracy on him, so going to bring him into camp, see if maybe he's better than we thought he was. So we'll go ahead and draft Savonarola in the first round. Also have one guy we're thinking about for the second round. We'll see if he's available when our pick comes up. And there is still the catcher that we were marginally interested in available here in the second round. David Aldretti out of Colombia. Fantastic defensively. Just don't think he is a major league hitter. He'll be 23 years old this year. He is durable physically. Played in rookie ball, A ball, and high A ball last year. Only hit 201 in high A ball. Did have a dozen home runs. We'll bring Aldretti into camp also. Have a hard time believing that we'll retain him. He is a switch-hitting, durable catcher who's very good defensively. Issue is I just don't think he's enough of a hitter to really be a major leaguer, but we'll go ahead and draft him and at least have a couple of younger options picked up in the Rule 5 draft this year. Again, I'd be very surprised, barring some significant injuries, if either of them makes the 26-man roster, but we don't really lose anything by taking a look at them in spring training before making a decision. And we've simmed ahead now to the new year, still exploring lots of trade options, but have not landed the plane on anything, unfortunately. Or perhaps fortunately, because there really hasn't been a good deal that we've been all that interested in. But we've made it to the international amateur free agent signing period. So finally, there may be something interesting for us to think about. And we've got a lot more information now in this international amateur free agent class than we did the last time we checked in back in mid-October when the class was first introduced. So take a quick look now at the prospects that are out there. 2 5-star hitting prospects according to our scout, Horacio Gineco out of Venezuela. Looks like he's a first baseman / third base, and certainly an interesting bat with that home run power if he fully developed. Also looking for relatively a lot of money, and league interest in him is high. Juan Palomo, 16-year-old shortstop out of the Dominican. Kind of like him. 16-year-old. Looks like he could have a pretty interesting bat and be competent defensively. He's a leader. Certainly a guy to consider, not asking for a ton of money, and we've also got a very strong relationship with him. Andres Castillo is a guy that we had scouted a bit, and then we kind of moved on from. Don't love the low work ethic. He is durable, but a mediocre defensive outfielder likely. Looks like he could have an interesting bat, but it wasn't special enough, especially for a guy who's almost 18 years old, for us to spend a lot of time. We also had him in camp a couple times and just never were able to develop a very good relationship with him either. Rodolfo Guerrero, a right fielding prospect out of Colombia. Durable, decent bat. You know, he's kind of a guy that for a fallback option wouldn't be the worst thing. If he was looking for less money, he could be more of a priority, but with the money he's looking for, not all that exciting to me. Andres Perdomo, 16-year-old out of the Dominican, like the outfield range, pretty interesting potential bat, has the speed to some extent to take advantage of that gap power. So we like Perdomo as well. Luis Ortega, another shortstop, like the high work ethic, really interesting home run power and eye. Durability is strong. The question is whether he's going to make enough contact and avoid striking out enough to be a productive offensive player, but certainly an interesting prospect. And then last but not least, the right fielder, Juan Larios. Durable left-handed hitter, corner outfielder with a little bit of speed and a somewhat interesting bat. Also not looking for a ton of money. So certainly could go really high-end and expensive, but I kind of like Larios, who's only looking for $900,000, as well as Juan Palomo, who's only looking for $900,000, as perhaps the first two guys to investigate here among the position players. But we have not looked at the pitchers yet, and there are some interesting prospects. Sergio Herrera, 16-year-old out of Colombia, like a lot of his personality traits, extreme ground ball tendencies with potentially excellent movement on his pitches. Looks like he could have a 3 to 6 pitch arsenal. Has some, as I mentioned, good personality traits with a high leadership, work ethic, and intelligence. Pretty interesting prospect. We've got a very strong relationship with him. Not surprisingly, he is looking for a lot of money. Solano Toselli, 18-year-old out of Brazil. Like the high work ethic, a little older for an international amateur free agent. 3-pitch guy, unless that changeup comes out of nowhere and develops. But for the money he's looking for, only 200,000 and not a ton of league interest. He is intriguing to me as a value play to perhaps lever in or layer in more accurately with some of those position players we talked about. Zhao Dao Chen, 16-year-old out of Australia. Left-handed starting prospect. Looks like he's a 3 or 4 pitch guy. A lot of positive personality traits, good stamina, good at holding runners. Not the greatest stuff in the world because none of his pitches are expected to be exceptional, but looks like a prospect with that work ethic. Probably has a relatively high floor. And then the most intriguing one is a guy that we view as only a 2.5-star potential prospect at this point, Ernesto Zambrana, a 16-year-old out of the Dominican. But he's a 16-year-old who's durable, throws in the mid-90s already, certainly has the stamina to start, and our scout thinks that his fastball, changeup, sinker, and splitter could all be off the charts good, which would lead to off the charts stuff, off the charts movement, and control being the question for him. I struggle a bit with the very high scouting accuracy and this profile only being listed as a 2.5-star potential guy. Looking at what the OSA sees, they kind of see similar things. They don't think his fastball's got quite the upside, but other than that, pretty similar to what our scout thinks. And Zambrana, looking for 1.8 million, and we've got a very strong relationship with him. So part of me says, you've got a prospect like Zambrana, just offer him every penny we can possibly offer to somebody right now and take a shot at him. Looking at the scouting history, we've always kind of thought he was a 2.5-star guy. I guess briefly we thought he was a 3-star guy back in November. But if he somehow developed to the full extent of his potential, this is a guy who could win, 8 Cy Young Awards over the course of his career with that type of pitching profile. Clearly, the expectation is not that he develops to the maximum potential that we see here. We don't know much about his personality, which isn't incredibly helpful for us at this point. But he is certainly an interesting player to think about. So what I'm going to do right here is I'm going to hedge a little for the next few days. We are going to make an offer to Zambrana, but I'm not going to go crazy. He says at 1.8 million he loves us and he'd love to come play for us, but I've heard that before. But we'll certainly view him as a guy that we'll think about. And then Solano Toselli, the 16-year-old out of Brazil, is just interesting potential value because he's not looking for much. So we're going to meet his 200,000 demand as well right now. And then we're going to go back to those 2 position players who weren't looking for crazy amounts of money. Juan Palomo, the shortstop, says he's looking for 900,000. We'll beat that demand and submit the offer to him. And then last but not least, Juan Larios, also looking for 900,000. We're going to go ahead, just meet his demand, submit the offer to him. So we've got 4 offers out to guys that we like a lot. Total amount offered is 3.8 million, so we do have a little bit of flexibility to increase those offers. Certainly don't expect that we're going to get all of these guys. I think it's conceivable that Zambrana in particular comes back to us and tells us that he's got a big offer from somebody else. Looks like Toselli already favors the offer since there's not a ton of interest in him. But we'll see what happens. Part of me thought that I would end up just offering 4.75 million to Zambrana right now and figuring out whether or not we were going to get him or not, by just throwing everything at him. But don't feel like we have to do that quite yet. Obviously, if Toselli signs with us quickly, that would mean even if Larios and Paloma reject our offers, the most we could get to Zambrana is 4.55 million. So perhaps will be costing us there. But it's also conceivable with Zambrana's profile that he ends up going for 5.5 million, and a number that we wouldn't be able to touch unless we made a lot of wacky trades to pick up some international amateur free agent dollars from others. So we'll see how this goes. Right now we're just kind of spraying the market, trying to start conversations with some prospects that we think are interesting. And perhaps not surprisingly, Mr. Zambrana has already come back to us and says that we need to increase the dollars. Says he's only looking for 2 million, so that's a number that we can hit right now. But now he's looking for 2.08. Now he's looking for 2.12. So he's trying to get every penny out of us, which I guess I can't blame him for. If I had been a professional athlete caliber talent in my youth, I would have tried to maximize my earning potential as well. And we have signed our first player, the right fielder Juan Larios, for $900,000. So that'll take us out of the mix if anybody ends up wanting the max. To me, he's not a bad prospect, though. A left-handed hitter. Looks like his bat could be pretty interesting. Not going to walk a ton, but he's durable. He's got some speed. Feel like he's not a bad guy to bring into our system. Palomo looking for more money. Zambrana looking for more money as well. But we can still potentially be active with both of those guys if we want to. Palomo is certainly an interesting hitting prospect. Says he's only looking for 1.2 million now, so that's a number that we could afford. Question is how much Zambrana is looking for right now. And he's up to 2.8 million. So I do tend to think that Zambrana is going to end up going for a wacky amount of money. So I'm going to pivot to Palomo for the time being. Meet his demand for 1.2 million. And apparently that's not going to be enough. I don't know why that always happens in this game. 1.25 apparently will do it with Mr. Palomo. And he says it's the deal that he likes right now, but we've been lied to before. And Solano Toselli is going to break my heart. He had that $200,000 offer from us that he said he really liked. Now he's even come back looking for more money. 340 is what he says he wants. We'll see if 350 will get the deal done. If both of the deals for, if I could go where I want to, if the deals for Toselli and Paloma both fall apart in relatively short order and Zambrana is still out there, maybe we make one last ditch effort to try to bring him on board. But I tend to think it's just going to be a bidding war situation for him that we're not going to be able to win. There is definitely a part of me that, looking at that profile, thinks we should have just offered him every penny. If I knew more about his personality and his personality traits, I probably would have done that. Maybe something we regret, but Zambrana will certainly be an interesting guy to follow over the course of his career if we don't end up signing him. And obviously, we'll be following him very closely if somehow we still end up with him when this international amateur free agent period is all said and done. But I think the odds of that are getting unlikely. And Juan Paloma has come back and said he wants more money. Number for him is only 1.4 million, so it's certainly doable, but I may try to fire one more bullet at Mr. Zambrana here. Ooh, He's got an offer greater than us, so not surprising that we got to that point with him. Kind of thought that would happen anyways. All right, well, Mr. Palomo, now we are really interested in you. Let's keep this discussion going. 1.4 million. And Zambrana is now signed with the Cincinnati Reds. Let's see what he ended up going for. 4.96, so it was more than we could have done anyways. We had 4.75 million. As I talked about, we could have gone into the trade market and tried to get some cash from some other teams, but the cost of that has, I don't want to say it's been prohibitive, but it's been high and somewhat complicated to execute on those trades in the past for me, so just not something I wanted to spend a ton of time doing. I'm certainly going to put Zambrana on the short list of players whose careers that we track, because not at least throwing every penny that we had at him right from the start could be a decision that we come to regret for decades to come. And our buddy Solano Toselli still looking for more and more money every time around. 750,000 now, so we'll meet that demand. We've got the money to try to lock both him and Palomo up at this point. I like both of those guys, so we're going to keep negotiating with them, taking a look more broadly at international amateur free agents. Perdomo and Ortega are probably out of our price range. Kind of interesting that Castillo is still out there. And then pitcher-wise, I guess we could always pivot to Zhao Dao Chen or Sergio Herrera. Zhao Dao Chen, wonder how much he's looking for at this point. It says 750,000. And it says he's looking for 1.68 million at this point, so we'll hold off on him for the time being. Sergio Herrera, he's got a big offer from somebody, so Dudu will not be a member of the Buffalo Wings organization. And Juan Palomo now back looking for more money. Depending on how much he's looking for, we do still have money to spend. 2.6 million, so that's starting to get up there. I do like Palomo, though, as a prospect. Glove, where he could certainly play second, third, or short. Wouldn't think he's a gold glover at any of those positions. But he's also still got a potentially interesting bat. I'm inclined to at least keep shooting after him. It's conceivable he's going to end up going for more than we can afford when all is said and done. But we'll meet that $2.6 million demand at this point and keep the discussion going. And the preseason begins today, and we did just get Solano Toselli signed. So now we've got an outfielder as well as a pitching prospect, left-handed starting prospect, like the high work ethic with Toselli. Think that Slick could be an interesting prospect for us. So two pretty interesting prospects, to repeat my words, signed for us. Toselli, who we were just talking about, and then Larios right at the start of the period. Like his durability, like his above average speed, and like the fact that his bat looks like it could be a little bit above average too. Don't know that we've got a future superstar among those two, but with 750,000 to Toselli and the 900,000 to Larios, we've got the 2.6 million offer outstanding, and it looks like we could go up to 3.1 million total if we want to try to bring in Palomo. At this point, we probably go up to the max that we can, and if we can't get him signed, pivot to somebody else or look to trade that money away. And unfortunately, Palomo looking for more money. I don't know if we're going to have enough to meet him. 2.8 is what he's looking for. At this point, I'm going to offer him every penny that we can possibly offer him and hope that we just blow him away and get him signed. And if we can't, then we'll try to pivot that money to somebody else that's still available. Says he loves us and he'd love to come play for us. So let's see whether or not you're a lying little weasel, Juan. And fortunately for us, we did end up getting Juan Palomo signed for that full offer that we made him of the last $3.1 million that we have. So 3 interesting players, shortstop, a right fielder, and a starting pitching prospect signed by us in the international amateur free agent period. Spent every penny that we could. So I like the prospects that we brought into our system, but clearly we will be following Ernesto Zambrana over the course of his career with Cincinnati and see what he becomes or does not become. Again, there's no guarantees since he ended up going for $4.96 million, that if we had offered him the $4.75 that was our maximum at the time, that we would have been able to get him on board. But I don't hate the guys that we ended up with. Obviously, it's great to hit a home run, but there's no guarantees that he's going to be a home run, and feel like we may have some doubles and singles in the guys that we drafted, or more accurately, signed as international amateur free agents this year. And with that done, I think it's going to be time to finish up this episode. We've still got money available. The free agent pool is uninspiring at this point. Some familiar names, Franklin Hill, among the pitchers who are still available. Chris Sabatka, former starter for us, who we moved on from a few years ago, also available on the market. Batter-wise, our old buddy Dylan Carlson is viewed as one of the top free agents out there. Campbell Smithwick's price has come down. It would be a bit odd if just months after I didn't want to bring Miller on as our backup catcher and traded him away because he was going to be making $5 million, to give a big offer to Soup Smithwick to be a backup catcher for even more money than that. But if he's willing to do a 1-year deal, we've got the money to spend. And unfortunately, he's looking for 3 years at $7.5 million a year. So we'll hold off on Campbell Soup Smithwick for the time being. Lemus is another guy that was intriguing to us with his catcher ability. Wouldn't be a horrible backup catcher. He's not a major league hitter, but he's also not looking for a ton of money. He does have option years left. He would presumably refuse a minor league assignment, but at least see exactly what he's looking for. Minor league contract that becomes a guaranteed major league contract if promoted. I'm willing to entertain that. I don't know that I want to be paying him 2.2, try to save every penny that we can. So we'll give him a minor league contract with a major league option of $2 million. And he's willing to at least think about that. So throw him into the potential mix for our backup catcher next year as well, if we do end up signing him. So we're going to spend a lot of time offline and probably in the next episode still trying to find some trades. We have been perusing the world, looking for maybe a young catcher with some potential to be our backup catcher and potential long-term successor to Andres Medina if he opts out after 3 years. Just haven't found the right deal. Feel like our lineup is potentially still a bit right-handed heavy. So we've also put Arturo Flores and Tyreek Hardage onto the trade block. We've been entertaining offers for the two of them over the last month and a half of game time. Haven't seen anything interesting, but it's conceivable that we won't be able to fit both of those guys on our 26-man roster. And as much as I like Tyreek Hardage for his ability to play any position defensively in the outfield at a high level and his good speed, he is, over parts of 4 seasons in the majors, a below-average offensive player. Similarly, Flores is an international amateur free agent signing of ours from just over 8 years ago, one of the more high-end international amateur free agents that we've ever gone after. He's durable, he's got a great personality, he's a captain, but he's also a guy who's 25 years old, doesn't play much defense, and is a right-handed hitter. He's good against left-handed pitching, but certainly nothing special against right-handed pitching. And over the course of his career, he's a slightly above-average offensive player. So if I was able to extract some amount of value for Flores and or Hardage, I'm willing to do that. Going to continue exploring it. So far, the offers that we received have not blown me away, which is why I haven't spent any time discussing them with you. But we will continue to pursue potential trades and pursue potential free agents in our next episode as we start getting closer to spring training and the start of the 2038 season. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.